The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
You may be having a good day, but I can almost guarantee you that you're not having a better day than Bobby Bonilla, who will check his checking account later today and find that there has been a deposit of $1,193,000 by the New York Mets from a contract that dates back over a quarter century ago. It is Bobby Bonilla Day. And for the 16th straight year, he will get that big bonanza, and he will get it every July 1st through 2035. Wowza. It is a wonderful day for Bobby Bonilla. And it is something of a happy birthday for me and maybe for you if you've listened to this format for a long time. This is the 39th anniversary of sports radio. We started WFAN in New York 39 years ago today, and we will look back on that later this hour. In fact, next year will, of course, be 40, and that will be my last full year in radio. My plans are to retire right after the Super Bowl, or about a week after the Super Bowl in 2028. So my last celebration of the birth of sports radio will be next year, but today we will celebrate birthday number 39, and we will get to that. But we did have some early fireworks last night, and we had them in Boston, and a couple of remarkable things about this. One, it didn't seem like anything could have really touched off something like what occurred. Usually it's a pitch that goes a little bit too close, or a batter gets hit and a revenge, and you know, that touches off a brawl. But what happened last night is remarkable in this regard. The pitcher who threw the pitch, Cade Cavalli, and then, you know, had to wait out this long delay. I mean, it took him about 15 to 20 minutes to get everything back under control and eject a couple of players, eject the manager of the Red Sox. The fact that Cade Cavalli composed himself and had the best game of his career and one of the best pitch games the Nationals have ever had. Of course, we've had 3 no-hitters, 2 by Max Scherzer, but Cavalli went 7 innings. He gave up only 1 hit. He didn't walk anybody, and he struck out 13. You can't ask for better starting pitching than that. And the Nationals won the game 8-1. So when you talk about this game, you should be talking about how great Cavalli was. But you have to throw in the brawl that occurred. And according to what Contreras said, that after he struck out, he was told that he should sit down, boy. That Cade Cavalli said that to him. You see the two jawing at each other, and then the peacemaker was Miles Mikolas, who looks like something of a bouncer, right? He's got that big mustache and big guy, and he was kind of prying people off, players. He got into sort of a wrestling match. There weren't any punches thrown, but he got kicked out of the game. I don't know what that means. I would imagine he's going to get a suspension. I'm not sure, because when you throw a pitcher who's not going to pitch in the game anyway out, I don't know what that means, but he got tossed. And then Contreras got tossed as well. This was Blake Butera, manager of the Nats, after the game on how all this unfolded.
Look, I mean, Cade, heat of the moment, said something. I still need a chance to look at it. But at the end of the day, I know that he's ultra competitive and was pretty fired up after that strikeout because he knows how good of a hitter Contreras is. And like I said, look, he's very competitive and heat of the moment, and unfortunate what happened from there on, but happy with how he pitched after. Look, it's really tough. Heat of the moment, like I said, and Cade is very competitive and wants to win, and got really fired up in the moment. Look, in that moment, I immediately ran out there to try to get Cade and separate things the best I could. All of his teammates, of course, went out there too to separate him and try to just calm it down the best they could. I know Miles was involved in something on the side. Like I said, I needed to have a chance to watch the video and see what all went down in detail, but they threw Miles out for fighting with one of their players. Like I said, I think that Miles is probably trying to protect himself and others. Miles has been around for a while and has a pretty good feel of things. And like I said, I haven't had a chance to see all the detail yet. But at the end of the day, glad nobody got hurt. And our teammates were trying to protect each other. There was a lot going on, of course. And to be able to move forward from that and settle his emotions a bit and pitch the way he did against that lineup and get us through 7 innings, he threw the ball really well. And I was, it was really impressive what he was able to do, obviously with all the emotions flying high.
Now, we'll see if there's any further action by Major League Baseball other than the ejections last night. Contreras said that he apologized to Cavalli. Cavalli said, no, I never heard an apology from him. As for why he would say to a batter he just struck out, sit down, boy, he's a man of color. He's not African-American. He's from Venezuela. But why would he say that to him? That's a racially charged word. And Cavalli said of Contreras, he's just been doing stuff. In the first inning, he just runs past me and brushes me. It's just something you don't do in baseball. I think he knows that. I didn't say anything. I just looked at him, and a few words were said after the strikeout. It's part of the game, and he's going to let everybody run out there and try to do whatever he does, throw a helmet and get himself tossed. That was really the big thing that he did was try and throw a helmet. And that probably was the real, explosive part of all of this. And look, I'm sure he's got a lot on his mind with what's going on in Venezuela. He has family members there, and he's been very concerned about that. And in fact, he had been ejected the night before. It was only his first time it ever happened in Red Sox history. They're 126 years old. He acknowledged he's having a difficult time while they recover from earthquakes there, and that is understandable. He was kicked out of the Monday game for mimicking an appeal call after striking out on a check swing. So he was with the umpire, not with another player. But anyway, Nationals get the win, and they remain now. I guess they're back over 500, right? With the loss on Monday, they're 500 now. They're game over, and they can win another series. They keep racking up the series, and they got a 135 game this afternoon as they will try to make it 2 out of 3 tonight. 8 o'clock, U.S. versus Bosnia-Herzegovina in the knockout round in the World Cup. And this will be, they'll be going for only their second win in the knockout stage. They're 1-7. This is a huge night for American soccer. Taylor Twellman, analyst, former U.S. player, now with Apple TV, has been watching what has been so far an outstanding tournament. The U.S. with their 2 wins and all the excitement with 25 stoppage time goals going into last night. This was Twellman yesterday with Rich Eisen on why it's been so good.
I don't know if I could put my finger on one thing, Rich, on why it's been so good. Now, on one hand, I would say 25 stoppage time goals could be part of the hydration break and the fact that you're more than likely adding 10 minutes to the end of the game. And I don't say that tongue in cheek. I mean that like logistically and mathematically, how much is that? But we saw some of this in 2022 because they were in an essence saying, we're going to add time if you're delaying games, delaying restarts, rolling around. So they've already implemented this in world football and in the game internationally that we're going to add extra time. And if it's 12 minutes, it's 12 minutes. But in saying that, in this pressure cooker, you still have to deliver in that moment. And that's where that gets the attention. So 25 stoppage time goals to me is thrilling. This is a sport that you can easily, collectively shut down a better team with better players. No better example than Paraguay against Germany yesterday. And I was there. I was in the building, and I was there from start to finish. Germany had no answers. There was an arrogance by how they approached the game. But Paraguay, the same team that the United States completely handled with ease, frustrated the absolute heck out of Germany just by collectively being on point. Now, penalties are penalties, and you've got a 6'10" goalkeeper with a wingspan that covers the entire goal, and he came up massive in key moments. And Germany had a disallowed goal. And for those of you that are watching this, by letter of the law, that was the right call. I have no idea why Germany's attacking player is facing the goalie instead of just looking at the ball. Because if he's looking at the ball, it's no different than pass interference in the NFL. I'm not sure that would have been called back, but because he basically approaches the goalie, inhibits his space, the right call was made. This tournament, I still believe, Rich, and I know what the essence of your question is. I still believe the cream of the crop will rise to the top.
And maybe that's going to be Germany, but what do you read into a 1-1 tie with Paraguay, a team that the U.S. beat easily in the opening 4-1? Are there some cracks in the German armor?
In 2014, I was in the building working for ESPN when they beat Argentina to win the World Cup. Since then, Bayern Munich has won 94% of the Bundesliga titles. Since then, they've got grouped in 2018. They've got grouped in 2022, and they lost to Paraguay in the round of 32. And so something has happened to the German player. They lack personality. They lack a character that was always a given for Germany. There's no juice to them. They don't scare the opposition. Paraguay was completely in control, even if they gave up 20, 21 corner kicks, whatever it was. I think when you look at this United States team, there's a hunger that would give them a listen. We all watched the friendly before the World Cup in Chicago. I get it; it's a friendly before the World Cup, but the United States completely handled themselves with ease, with no real struggle against a Germany team that in years past they would have struggled against. And so, listen, the high-profile player, maybe on the German side from 1 to 26. But that gap that used to be pretty big when I was playing against Germany, I'm not totally sure that exists right now. And I think that's a bigger indictment on Germany versus the feather in the cap of the United States. Because I think the feather in the cap for the United States, they've bridged the gap with a lot of nations. I just don't think the German public fully understands what to do now.
Well, here's the deal for tonight. This is arguably the biggest match we've ever had. They've only won once in the knockout round. They've lost 7 times. So they're going against Bosnia-Herzegovina tonight. This is the scouting report from Taylor Twellman.
This is the team that knocked Italy out of the World Cup playoff, that forced Italy to miss their 3rd straight World Cup. Mm-hmm. This is not an easy out. Are they favored? Absolutely.
Okay.
They're going to be better tactically than Paraguay. They're going to be more astute individually within the collective process. And what I mean by that, each individual will do his job for the collective to really work. They're going to frustrate the United States. They're not going to be as ugly as Australia played. They'll be better technically. In saying that, though, Rich, I think your audience will appreciate this, is that when you look at their emotional competence in this will be the first knockout stage game for Bosnia. Okay? That is very interesting for them on how to deal with that. The other part to this is when they walk out onto the field and they see all red, white, and blue, their same colors, and yet all red, white, and blue are rooting for the United States. How do they deal with that? I think the first 25, 30 minutes is massive for the United States. And I think if they get an early goal, they blow the doors off the building. Now, in the 65th minute, when you text me and say, why is it still 0-0? That is where Bosnia is going to be sitting there. They're playing with house money. The anxiety of the building is going to raise. And then the United States, which I don't know this answer to, who are the wild cards coming off the bench? We didn't get those answers in the Turkey egg game. So now Pochettino, after the first 45 minutes, is massive for the United States. Absolutely huge.
Taylor Twellman, now an analyst with Apple TV, used to play on the U.S. team. So an early goal will mean a lot in San Jose tonight. And the longer it goes without the U.S. scoring, the more it might favor Bosnia. But there is a very wonderful story that you may not be fully aware of. You remember the name Antonio Freeman, who was a Green Bay Packers receiver, caught an 81-yard touchdown pass in the Super Bowl win over New England in 1997, and probably is even more famous for the Monday night game, the Al Michaels. He did what? where it looked like the ball had hit the ground, but it hit his back, bounced off. Freeman gathered it back in, got off the ground, and scored a touchdown. Yeah, that's maybe what he's better known for. But his son was the one, Alex Freeman, was the one who scored the goal that put the U.S. up 2-0 against Australia, and he is quite a story as well. He was the youngest player on the team at 21 years old, and was playing in a situation where they didn't necessarily think he would be in there because he'd been hurt earlier in the game. He got knocked down, and it was questioned whether he was going to get up. So we'll get to that warm and wonderful story in the next hour regarding the World Cup. But warm and wonderful is how Bobby Bonilla is going to feel shortly when he checks his checking account and sees that another $1 million has been deposited, as it is every July 1st. And we'll get to the backstory on that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
This may be the only time you hear the name Chris Davis today. Actually, he's having a better day than Bobby Bonilla. Chris Davis signed this enormous contract with the Orioles and then, I don't know, forgot how to hit. He flamed out, and they worked out a deferred payment schedule on his monster contract. And so he today is collecting $3.5 million. This started in 2023 and will go through 2032. And then once 2033 hits, till 2037, he'll get $1.4 million. That's nice money. But Bobby Bonilla, his deal goes back really to the end of the last century. He hit just 160 in 60 games for the New York Mets in 1999. And so in January of 2000, they had to figure out a way to get rid of him. And he had only $5.9 million left on his contract. I mean, today, that's chicken feed. You write him a check, you say, thank you very much, have a nice day. But in 2000, there was someone by the name of Bernie Madoff who was making Fred Wilpon, the owner of the Mets, a lot of money in the stock market, or it seemed that way. So that led us to what we have today, where Bobby Bonilla is collecting $1.19 million, and he will continue to do that every July 1st for the next 9 years. And he is today getting it for the 16th straight year. A couple of years ago, he talked to Maggie Gray, then with SI.com, about the deal that his agents made for him upon his exit from the New York Mets in 2000.
I was very fortunate to be able to put something together with Dennis Gilbert that paid me a little longer, and I was able to weather some storms, and it was a great move on our part.
So what's the advice that you would give to someone else if they ever find themselves in the unique place that you were at?
Well, my advice to young players is to make sure you surround yourself with great people, and it's going to take your due diligence to make sure you do a little homework. I mean, obviously, you don't know who's out there because people can wine and dine you, and you could end up with the wrong person. But the most important thing really is to make sure you really do surround yourself with the right people. And if you have to fire somebody, don't feel bad about it. It's your money, and you have to look after it. And it's important because they wine and dine you, and then all of a sudden, it becomes friends, and you don't want to make a proper decision. You got to learn to say no, or if you have to let somebody go, you have to do it.
Yep. As John Thompson used to say, I don't want a poodle guarding my house. I want a Doberman. And that's how I used to defend David Falk, who was not the best liked, but certainly a very effective agent in handling his negotiations. I got a Thompson story coming up, but you wonder how they got to this point. How does a team look at $5.9 million left on a contract and get to the point where they are agreeing to pay him, it's 8% interest, and at the time they were getting 16 from Madoff, so they thought it made sense. But how does a team agree to a deal that has them paying a player until 2035? Oh, and by the way, it was the second contract that Bonilla had signed with the Mets. When he had gone there as a free agent, I believe in 1991, he became the highest paid player in baseball history with a $29 million deal. And that deal had deferred money that just ran out a couple of years ago. That was $500,000 a year. Just how does it come to this? Steve Phillips was the general manager of the Mets when the deal was made, and a couple of years ago he put together a video explaining how indeed we could have this Bobby Bonilla day.
I was GM for the Mets from 97 until 2003 and was involved in negotiating the infamous Bobby Bonilla 25-year buyout. Early in his career, Bobby Bonilla was a dynamic offensive player. Switch hitter, could hit from line to line, hit for average, hit for power, drove in runs. He was a big run producer, a middle-of-the-lineup kind of guy. In fact, the first time the Mets signed him, they made him the highest paid player in Major League Baseball. When we brought Bobby Bonilla back the second time with the Mets, expectations were different. He was going to be a role player. Bonilla wanted to be an everyday player. That opportunity didn't really exist on our roster, and therein lied some part of the rub. Valentine used him as a role player, and there was a time in June when actually Bobby Valentine told Bonilla to get a bat he needed in a pinch hit. Bonilla said, "No thanks, I'm good." After the game, Bonilla and Valentine got into it in the clubhouse. The next day, same thing happened, and it was at that point that I probably should have thought about releasing Bobby Bonilla, but I thought to myself, it's my deal, it's not a great deal. I want to try to find a way to get him back on track and trade him and not go to the owner to talk about releasing him. Probably the straw that broke the camel's back was we're taking on the Atlanta Braves in the National League Championship Series. It's Game 6 in Atlanta, and we're going extra innings.
3-2 pitch. Bring on the Yankees.
Kenny Rogers walked in the winning run, and it was a devastating loss, but Bobby Bonilla and Rickey Henderson were actually in the clubhouse playing cards when Kenny Rogers walked in that winning run. They were not on the bench. They weren't cheering for their teammates. They weren't really part of anything in trying to win that game. When the wintertime, Bobby Bonilla had a charity bowling tournament that he put on. The media would show up to be around the players and ask questions. Well, at that event, Bonilla told the media, be ready for fireworks for next year. Be ready, I'm gonna stir it up, I'm gonna cause trouble, I wanna be an everyday player. It was at that point that it was clear that we actually had to go back to ownership and try to find a way to get out of the deal. Ownership brought up the idea of trying to work out a buyout with Bonilla. The first time Bobby Bonilla had been with the Mets organization, he had some deferred compensation. In fact, he's still getting $500,000 a year from the first contract he had with the Mets. And it was at that point that ownership told me, go to the accounting department and ask them to crunch the numbers. The plan was that they would invest Bonilla's $5.9 million that was due to him in 2000 with Bernie Madoff. So when I went to the accounting department, what Fred Wilpon, the owner of the Mets, had asked is have them crunch numbers and try to calculate that if the Madoff fund had delivered 6% over 25, 30 years, 10% over that period of time, 16% over that period of time, what would the $5.9 million turn into? And what the accounting department came back with was that the Mets could make millions of dollars while investing Bonilla's $5.9 million with Bernie Madoff in his fund before they had to pay any money out to Bobby Bonilla. The $5.9 million that was due Bonilla in 2000 turned into a different sort of a deal. It was deferred for 10 years, and then starting in 2011, every July 1st for 25 years, Bonilla collects $1.19+ million from the Mets organization. From their perspective, it looked like a win-win. Bonilla could get his money, deferred compensation, a strong interest rate, and the Mets could make money, not only to pay Bonilla, but to make money with his money. When ownership suggested that we defer this money, first of all, I'm already feeling badly that I'm the one who traded for Bobby Bonilla and put the organization in this position. Owners don't like to eat money. Doesn't taste good. They like money. They don't like to eat it. So the concept of deferring it where the organization could make money gave me a sense of relief. By deferring Bobby Bonilla's $5.9 million, it freed up some cash flow for the 2000 season, which gave us the opportunity to get Mike Hampton from the Houston Astros and set the course for the 2000 World Series.
Hampton with a count of 3-1. For the first time since 1986, the Mets are going to the World Series.
Madoff scandal has cast a cloud over the New York Mets.
The team's finances are indeed in shambles, all as a result of Bernie Madoff. And now they're on the hook for $29 million owed to Bonilla. And by the way, those payments start coming due in July.
You know, I have talked to Bobby a little bit about the deferred compensation and going back to actually everything that happened. And he realizes that he probably doesn't have the greatest relationship with New York baseball around the Mets, media, the fans, and everything else.
Make you move.
But he also understands that he handled his money very well. Deferred compensation was always part of a vision for him, stemming from his agents and their sort of background as well. So he's been a good money manager, just not the greatest of teammates.
Well, yeah. And it's so ironic for me because I remember I was covering a lot of baseball in 1990. There was a one-year sports network called Sports News Network, and I was at a lot of Mets and Yankees games. And I remember talking to Bobby Bonilla about free agency upcoming for the Pirates. He was with the Pirates then, and he wound up, as Philip said, signing with the Mets for that $29 million. And he was beloved in Pittsburgh. I mean, he was the anti-Barry Bonds. They played together on the same team. Bonds was hated there. He went to the Giants the next year as a free agent, or 2 years later, whenever it was. But Bonilla went in 1991 to the Mets, and at the news conference, he said, "You're not going to be able to wipe this smile off my face." And by the time he got to the end of his run, which was disappointing, and the money, that always, ratchets up the pressure, and especially in New York, they were throwing batteries at him in the outfield. He resorted to wearing a batting helmet. He was hated when he was run out of there, which is kind of curious that they bring him back in the late 90s to be a role player when he didn't want to be a role player with the Mets. But boy, in the game of finance, he's Babe Ruth, certainly. There are those who understand money a lot better than I do and say, well, if he would have invested the $5.9 million in another way, that he'd be making more money than he's making now. I don't know, but it would just make me very happy every July 1st to go, oh, I'm $1 million richer today. It's been a joke in recent years. Steve Cohen bought the Mets in November of 2020, and he joked about giving Bonilla an oversized check and driving a car around Citi Field every July 1st. He's like, if we got to pay the money, we might as well have some fun with it. That hasn't happened. I don't think Bonilla. In fact, I think Bonilla is going to be at Camden Yards this afternoon. Hopefully in an air-conditioned suite, because it's going to be blazing hot when the game starts at 12:30. And he did play for the Orioles after leaving New York. Anyway, there was a promotion also by the Mets where they listed an Airbnb stay near Citi Field with the header "private room hosted by Bobby," which would be Bobby Bonilla. Meantime, we had this story which surfaced in the last couple of days, and it's from the airport in Las Vegas, Harry Reid International Airport. And airport officials announced on social media the other day that a passenger identified by the game manufacturer IGT as Anthony won $3.3 million while playing Wheel of Fortune slot machines. He did put in a $10 bet. I've played the slots. I'm usually pumping in quarters, not $10. But he put in $10, and Kenahura, he won $3.3 million. And so he has not been fully identified other than Anthony, but he became an instant millionaire. The airport in Vegas is one of only two commercial airports in the U.S. to feature terminal gambling. The other is the Reno Tahoe International Airport. The machines, and this is where we tie in John Thompson from 30 years ago. The machines are owned by Michael Gaughan. He operates 1,400 machines across the terminals at the Vegas airport. In 2025, a little more than a year ago, one traveler got $1.8 million on a $5 bet on the Wheel of Fortune machine. And just in case you want to try that one, it's at Gate D. And the winner of this one, the $3.3 million, he will not have to pay any of his earnings to the state of Nevada. They don't have personal income on gambling winnings, but he will have to pay the feds 24% which I'm sure won't be a difficult check to write once he collects his $3.3 million. Anyway, remember the name Michael Gaughan, the man who operates these slot machines in the airport. He is the father of Brendan Gaughan, who was a walk-on for Georgetown in the mid-'90s. In 1996, as Georgetown was making its way to the Elite Eight with Allen Iverson, there was a big dust-up involving John Thompson, who had become, or wanted to become, I guess the thing was in the works, he wanted to become an investor with Michael Gaughan, and he was going to own 10% of that company that operated the slot machines. Big John always liked the slots, and he had a house in Vegas. He spent a lot of time there. He really liked to do that, and he had money, obviously, not just from his Georgetown coaching, but from his investments in Nike. He was a very, very wealthy man, and he wanted to invest in this. Problem is, at the time, gambling and NCAA basketball, oh, no. I wonder if he could even do that today. I wonder if he could, given the way things operate. But at the time, this was a big deal. What do you mean? He's going to coach in the NCAA tournament, and he's going to own slot machines? And it got to the point where the president of Georgetown, Leo O'Donovan, asked him to drop his gambling investments. And Thompson said, okay. He said, this is a person who's been extremely supportive of me and a person I love very dearly because he's permitted me to be me and understood what I was doing. I decided to drop it totally because he asked me to do it. But interesting if he took it another step, what the NCAA would have done, but it never got that far. But he wanted to be an investor in slot machines at a time when it was, radioactive. And I don't know how good of a walk-on basketball player Brendan Gaughan was, but I kind of always wondered how he got on the team. He was like 5'10". He wasn't fast, but, obviously Big John liked the connection that he had to his dad, but it never got off the ground. But, that was a big deal, and so I was reminded of that somebody had won that kind of money in a slot machine at the Vegas airport, even though I'm sure they do very, very well. In fact, I think there was a number in this story as to what he pulls in each year from the gambling. No, I guess not. But this, I'm sure, there's a nice little tidy profit owning slot machines in the Vegas airport, and for Big John Thompson, that did not quite happen back in 1996. All right, coming up. It was 39 years ago today that this format that you're listening to here, one of 3 stations in this area and hundreds and hundreds of stations across the country, started. And it started in New York City. It started at WFAN. It started not on the frequency they are now, the very famous 660. They also have an FM now. But it started on 1050. 1050 was the original starting, and in fact, I have a T-shirt that says WFAN 1050, but I was there the day it launched, and we'll look back on that launch and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Happy birthday to me and to all who celebrate the birth of sports radio today. It's not my actual birthday. That's a little over a month away. But it is the birth date of sports radio, all sports radio in New York in 1987. And just to give you a little background, radio was a lot different animal back then, back 39 years ago. And the audiences weren't as targeted as they are now. Like this particular format, sports radio is targeted to men 25 to 54. For example, in 1987, this frequency, 6:30 a.m., was a middle-of-the-road station. It was WMAL, which appealed to adults, both male and female, and it was, if not the top-rated station in the area, close to it. And along comes Jeff Smulyan, and Jeff Smulyan had been very successful owning music-based radio stations, though there was some talk involved, and they owned WJFK, which had Don and Mike at the time. They may have had Howard Stern in syndication by then, I'm not sure. But music was played on that station. And so they bought his company, Emmis Broadcasting, bought some stations in New York. Most of them were FM, but there was one AM station that was included in the package, and that was the 1050 frequency, long, old frequency in New York City, and they ran country music, soft country music, but they also had the Mets. And getting the Mets rights was key to this in launching this station. The Mets were defending World Series champions. And Smulyan and his partners, which included David Letterman as an investor, they had all gone to college at Ball State in Indiana. They were sports fans, and they thought to themselves, it's difficult to make money on an AM station. What if we were to build an all-sports format around the Mets, and we'll have a good time doing it? And if we break even, that'll be great. That's the goal here, to break even. So they start to put this together, and these guys were successful. They went first class on this, and they hired a guy by the name of John Channon. John Channon had been a producer with ABC Radio. He knew the sports market. He knew people who did sports broadcasting, and he put the lineup together. And in retrospect, it wasn't the right move. He went for national people. The late, great Greg Gumbel did the mornings. Jim Lampley in the middays. He hired Pete Franklin from Cleveland. Pete Franklin had grown up in Brooklyn, but he hadn't lived in New York in decades. And he was very successful at 3WE in Cleveland, and he was going to do the afternoons. But more importantly, they looked at the way people got their scores. Now, you have to remember, there's no internet then. There's no smartphones. There are two ways to get scores. Other than the next day's paper. One would be to listen to the sports updates on the all-news stations, which were WINS and WCBS, which were every half hour at 15 and 45. Or you could call Sports Phone, which the Gamblers did, for 50 cents a call, and somebody would spit out a bunch of scores in a 1-minute period. They thought, and they did research on this, 35% of the listenership they found for the all-news stations was there to listen to the sports reports. And they were only getting them every half hour. So he thought, why not do them every 15 minutes? So I was one of those hired to do the updates at top of the hour, 15, 30, 45. I mean, sure, it got monotonous, but those were the only ways you were getting scores and updates on news that was happening during the day. I did the mornings. Susan Waldman initially did the afternoons. There was somebody overnight. I mean, it was intensive 24 hours, and that's what they built it on. Update. You're never more than 15 minutes away from an update. And by the way, in the meantime, we have these big-name sports talk show hosts that hopefully will interest you as well. So on this day in 1987, I remember being in the studios for this big switch. 1050, which is the original station. It was a little over a year later that the MS people bought the NBC owned and operated stations, which included 660, and that's what made them switch their sports format from 1050 to 660. But on this day, it was on 1050, and this is how it sounded as country music WHN turned over to all sports 1050.
Other good times.
WHN, New York.
Unitas back to pass. 2 seconds, 1 second. Unitas throwing to Richardson. He has the ball in the 49. Brought down by Sample. The clock has run out, and the ball game is over. There's the gun, and the Jets are champions of the football world.
For all the great moments in sports, then and now. Sports Radio 1050, WFAN, New York City. All sports, all the time.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the first broadcast of WFAN All Sports 1050. You're sharing a part of radio history with us today. This is the beginning of the first 24-hour-a-day sports station. I'm Susan Waldman, and I'll be right back with the latest WFAN sports update.
All Sports Radio 1050 WFAN with Mets baseball. Quarter-hour sports updates. Inside information. Two-way sports talk. The cheers. The jeers. Great sports moments through the years. Up-to-the-minute coverage. Down-the-stretch calls. Controversy. Trivia. Gossip. If it's happening in sports, we'll have it as it happens. And we'll let you get your 2 cents in free on our call-in lines. Finally, radio built for the world's greatest sports fans. The world's first 24-hour all-sports radio station. Sports Radio 1050 WFAN.
So the audience got a little primer on what this was going to be all about. If you didn't understand sports radio, and a lot of people, they heard about it. It's statistics all day. I don't want to hear that crap. No, that's not what it became. And Pete Franklin was supposed to do that first show. Franklin's slot was 3 until Mets baseball, which usually started 6:30 with the pregame show. And unfortunately, after he signed his contract, which was reportedly $300,000 a year, which was a hell of a lot of money in 1987 in Cleveland, he had a heart attack. And that meant he couldn't come to work for at least a couple of months. So Jim Lampley, who would do the midday show, was tabbed to be the first host of the first show on WFAN at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on July 1st, 1987.
And good afternoon again. I'm Jim Lampley, and welcome once again to WFAN 1050 AM radio. The premise of this station is that what the world and the metropolitan area need now is a 24-hour-a-day sports information and sports-related entertainment radio programming format. 1050 on the dial, a place where you can now turn at any time of the day or night and receive within 15 minutes an accurate and complete update from the world of sports. It isn't often in a 75-year-old business that you have an opportunity to say that something is new. But this is new. In addition to the updates, hosts such as myself will fill out each hour with editorial comment, interviews, open phone line conversation, and reflections on important sports topics of the day. Come September, this particular time slot will be occupied by a gentleman named Pete Franklin, who has been a legend as a sports talk show host at radio station 3WE in Cleveland, Ohio. I will be moving as of tomorrow to my regular time slot at 10 a.m. and ending at 1 p.m. Preceding me in the mornings will be Greg Gumbel, who'll be on the air from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Radio great Lou Boda will be here every Saturday and Sunday, and we have a variety of other well-founded, deep background sports commentators who'll be filling out each hour on WFAN 24-hour sports radio station.
And they were off. That was Jim Lampley with the little intro, and he launched right into talking about the New York Mets. And the Mets were hot. They were a hot topic. Defending champs, middle of summer, baseball. And the station carried the Mets, and there's soon a big controversy about Darryl Strawberry and making a record recording and then showing up for the game not feeling well. I mean, there were all kinds of things to talk about in New York, but I was there and others who did updates to interrupt every 15 minutes to do an update. But that was considered to be the bread and butter because you couldn't look at your phone and get scores. And now, 39 years later, WFAN doesn't do updates at all. But the evolution of that station is fascinating. I don't know if anybody's written a book about it. I'd love to participate if somebody was interested in doing the work to put it together. But what unfolded in that first year showed them that all sports are local. And while Jim Lampley was an incredibly accomplished sports broadcaster by that time, he had already been at ABC for 15 years. He had done boxing. He was the original sideline reporter. He had covered, he covered the 1980 Olympics. He was a big deal nationally. And Greg Gumbel had come from ESPN, and of course his famous brother Greg Gumbel to do the mornings. They were considered two of the cornerstones, along with Pete Franklin, who had incredible success doing a sports talk show. They didn't have sports radio, but did a sports talk show in Cleveland. He was always number one. And they thought, well, we're going to build around this. But as things evolved, the stars of that station were New Yorkers. And a little over a year in, as I mentioned, the Emmis people bought the NBC-owned and operated stations. That meant WNBC, as Don Imus would say. Don Imus conveyed with the contract. You bought the station, you bought the Imus contract. He was making $1 million a year. You could pay him not to work, or you could pay him to work. And since Greg Gumbel's ratings weren't very good, they said, thanks a lot, Greg. Best of luck to you. He went on to great success at CBS and NBC. And Imus took over. It was Imus in the morning and sports all day. And Imus did a lot of political talk. He also did some sports, but a lot of political stuff. And it worked. Imus brought in a lot of revenue. But along the way, and this is where the Pete Franklin experiment ended. He had a 2-year contract. And over the course of time, Jim Lampley was fired by ABC. He went out to Los Angeles to do the news there, tried to do the show from there for a while. That didn't work. And eventually they put in Ed Coleman and Mike Francesa. And Chris Russo was a fill-in. Chris Russo had come over from another station in New York, which had tried a news talk format, which didn't work. And he came in as a fill-in, and he was filling in for Imus. And I remember hearing this as clear as day. It was Russo filling in, doing the Imus show. Francesa drove in to do his show, which started at 10 o'clock. And he heard what Russo was saying about how Will Clark was a better first baseman than Don Mattingly. Russo, big Giant fan. Francesa, big Yankee fan. And Francesa walked in, and they started arguing about who was a better first baseman. The program director heard it, and he thought this is like peanut butter and chocolate. And he put them together, and he put them in the afternoon. They had Imus in the morning, and it became the highest billing radio station in the country at one point. They lost a reported $4 million in the first year, which is a lot of money. But once they got their footing with Mike and the Mad Dog in the afternoon, Imus in the morning, they had a variety of shows in the midday. The overnight guy, Steve Summers, became something of a legend, and he provided a blueprint as to actually how to do sports radio because he had a great sense of humor. And he knew radio. He knew the one-to-one connection, which made it work. He was really the first star that emerged on the format, and he had a long run. And a number of people had long runs there, Francesa and Russo, and then Russo left. Francesa did it alone for like 10 years. But it all started on this day in 1987, and fortunately along the way, other people looked at the success that they had, and they said, well, let's do it in our city. So WIP came along in Philadelphia a short time later. And then finally in 1992, Mitch Rales, who's one of the key investors in the Commanders, and his brother Steve, they had a company, and they owned WGMS, AM and FM, and they flipped the AM, which was 570, to sports in 1992. I was hired to help put that together and had a great 25-year run there. So anyway, that's and there's a lot more details along the way, but it all started on this day in 1987 with the launch of WFAN on 1050. Coming up, reaction to what we saw from Serena Williams yesterday on PTI. Tony and Mike with their remarks yesterday. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Career record for Serena Williams, 858 and 157. The time between her last loss, career loss number 156, 4 years. Didn't play. Lost to Harmony Tan in the Wimbledon in 2022, 4 years ago. Retired. Came back yesterday, and she didn't win, but she acquitted herself very well. She lost to a 20-year-old, someone young enough to be her daughter, because Serena's now 44 years old. Maya Joint from Australia. Joint won the first set 6-3, but Serena, with still gas in the tank, came back, won the tiebreaker in the second set, and then finally went out 6-3. Tony and Mike, another couple of Altacockers, like Serena, relative to tennis, watched the match. Their reaction last night on PTI.
50th rank, 50th. Maya Joint was just 3-15 this season, but beat Serena 6-3 in the first set. Serena turned it around in the second, winning a tiebreak. But Joint rolled in the third 6-3 to a 3-set win. Tone, what did you take away from this performance? I know you watched it.
Yeah, well, first of all, I was told early in the morning that it was going to start at noon. I was really geeked up to watch it. I had my popcorn ready. I sit down at noon, and it doesn't start at noon. No, you get Zverev for 4.5 hours. The match actually starts at about 2:30 Eastern time, and before it starts, you have to go through 50 different features about Serena Williams. I am thinking this when I sit down and the match actually starts. I'm thinking that it's a terrible position for Maya Joint to be in.
Yeah.
Nobody wants
Agreed.
her to win. She maybe doesn't even want to win in this. She's won 3 out of her last 18 singles matches. She's up there against her idol. Everybody is cheering for her idol. They have picked out, a complete pigeon, it seems to me. Then I find out she has this great nickname, the Ginger Ninja. That's because she's involved in karate. Just a fabulous nickname. Anyway, yes, I did watch most of it. I thought early on, I left you a voicemail, I thought Serena was gassed early on, but she made a very good comeback, and she played okay. Yeah. She's 44 years old, Mike. I think I expected her to win. I think you expected her to win as well, but I wouldn't have expected her to win a second match. If she wants to continue doing it, God bless. You're a great player. If it makes you happy, keep doing it.
Yeah, Tony, I agree. And I thought she moved. I heard you say that early, and I was trying to, look, I'm balancing this with hope. It's like hoping LeBron goes to Golden State. I'm hoping Serena wins.
Yes,
but then I thought she did move better in the second set and early in the third. And then, it sort of crumbled, and I don't know what happens from here. Look.
She couldn't cover the whole court, Mike.
No, she couldn't.
She couldn't cover the whole court.
And she had to go to the slice forehand too much because she couldn't get in position on the forehand to come over the top. I don't want to get too nerdy about it in tennis speak, but yeah, I was sort of into it. But Tony, I think the greatest athletes, the GOATs, that short list of GOATs in whatever sport, they earn the right to play until you tear the jersey off.
Yes.
Until they tear it off themselves.
Exactly.
And so if Serena wants to play, God bless.
There is no crowd in the world that doesn't want to still see her.
That's right.
That's fine if she wants to get. That's fine. And play doubles with your sister. It's fine.
Well, that's in doubt now. Serena is supposed to play doubles with Venus on Friday, which has to be the oldest doubles team in history. Has to be. The combined age of 90, because Venus like a couple years older. I think she's 46. And so they're going to no, it's got to be more than 90. Yeah, right? Got to be close to 100. Exactly. Wow. Anyway, they're supposed to play. No, I guess it's 90. I always sucked at math. They're supposed to play on Friday, but the agent for Serena said she tweaked her knee after the first set yesterday. So she played in pain the last 2 sets and did win the second one in a tiebreaker. But they'll see how she responds to treatment. But yeah, I agree. I would not have watched late yesterday afternoon Wimbledon if Serena wasn't playing. I just would. I watched the final, watched the semifinals, but I would not have been watching yesterday. So people do want to see that. If she wants to continue to play, she should continue to play until, and again, it's going to be up to her. It's not, oh, God, no, nobody wants to see Willie Mays stumbling around the outfield. Well, in fact, Willie Mays was playing for a team that made the World Series in 1973. Yeah, it didn't look good when he was falling down trying to make a catch in the outfield, relative to what he was. But it was still Willie Mays, a generation that didn't remember him from 20 years earlier when he was playing for the New York Giants, got to see him play with the New York Mets. And here was a player yesterday who played Serena, who'd grown up watching her. She's, Maya Joint, 20 years old. So just think about this. By the time she was really aware of tennis, let's say that's 12 years ago, right? So she would have been 8. That would have been 2014. To me, that's yesterday. And Serena was well into her career at that point. If you really want to look at the great days of her career, it's probably the previous 10. But that's something that people get to see, and I think that was a really cool thing. I don't know whether this is, this could be posturing still, but there is a report from Marcus Spears of ESPN that all this talk you're hearing about Anthony Davis being traded to Golden State as a way of luring LeBron James there, the Wizards are saying to Spears and others, we're not doing it. We're just not going to do it. guy gets hurt a lot. He's older. He's in his mid-30s. It doesn't seem like this is a worthwhile thing, but apparently the Wizards are going to give him this extension, 4 years, $275 million. At the moment, he's got a year left on his contract and then a player option for 27-28. So theoretically, he could have a really great year this year, and some team might say, yeah, we'd really like to have him, and he can void his contract and get out. So what they're apparently going to do once you can start doing this August 6th is they will work on a contract extension which could pay him up to $275 million for 4 years. Man. The agent is Rich Paul for Davis. He's also the agent for LeBron, and he's also the agent for Draymond Green, who has opted out of his player option, $27.6 million for next season. That is going to free up some money for Golden State, which they could conceivably use to sign LeBron as a free agent. LeBron told the Lakers yesterday he's not going back there. According to this story in ESPN, if the Warriors pursue Anthony Davis, their matching salary would almost be assuredly including Jimmy Butler, who would be he's only 4 months removed from ACL surgery, so it's very much in question whether he'll be able to start the season. But he has an expiring contract of almost $57 million. Davis's contract for this upcoming year is $58 million. So the salary swap is easy. The question is, why would the Wizards want to take on Jimmy Butler? Jimmy Butler's going to be 37 years old, and he's coming off major knee injury. I don't think that's somebody, and he plays the same position as Bonsa. I don't think that makes any sense at all. So the Wizards, according to what ESPN is reporting here, what they want to do is they want to put Davis and Trae Young together as kind of the backbone of the team. They got the number one pick in Bonsa, Alex Sarr. He's coming off a broken foot, but they expect him to be ready for the start of the season. And that's what they're going to have. They're going to have a team that, for the first time in 4 years, will actually be trying to win. They've been trying to lose for 3 straight years. They've been very successful at that. But now they have, they think, with Davis, the makings of a team that is going to be competitive. We'll see. And we're just over an hour away from free agency in the NHL. It's amazing. You think of Alex Ovechkin and how long he's been with the Capitals. Remember, he was there, I think it's 2004 that he was drafted by, and they had a lockout that year, so they didn't play. But as long as he's been playing for the Capitals, 3 contracts. Got his rookie deal. Then he got a 13-year contract, one of the smartest things Ted Leonsis ever did. Got him under this long-term deal, which I didn't think he'd serve out because he was reckless. I didn't think there was any way he was going to last that long. He not only lasted that long, he signed a 5-year extension, which is now up. And the reason that he delayed in signing the extension is they wanted to wait through the expansion draft for Seattle. They were afraid that Seattle was going to take him and use him as something of a drawing card there, or at least take him and try and get a draft pick out of the Capitals to get him back. So they waited on that, but he signed it. And everything I saw from Ovechkin at the end of the season indicates he's playing. Now, why he hasn't announced yet what he's planning to do, I don't know. I don't think, even if he hits free agency, I don't think there's any other team he's going to sign with. I don't think that's going to happen. But remember, they had the final regular season game here. The Penguins wanted to have this big post-game recognition. He didn't want to do that. He also said that in the locker cleanout in April, he said, I hope it's not my last game. There's that. Spencer Carberry said on radio this week that they haven't had any indication yet, but they're going to let him take his time on that. What they're projecting for what he will sign for, be likely a 1-year deal. He's going to be 41 in September. That he would agree to a deal similar to what Evgeny Malkin agreed to last month or in May with the Penguins. Agreed to a 1-year deal, $5.5 million in salary and incentives up to $9 million. Capitals have added a couple of goal scorers, getting Jordan Kyrou from St. Louis and Alex Tuch from Buffalo. And I guess if they get Ovechkin back and he has similar production from last year, that's quite a bit of scoring. I think he had 32 goals last year. So he can still score. I mean, he's pretty much a one-trick pony at this point. But there's no PR battle to be won if they want to play hardball with him. Either he's going to play or he's not going to play it, but it's going to be his decision. It's going to be his decision whether he plays. I think the Capitals had hoped to have it by now. They'd hoped to have it before the draft, which was last week. They did not, and we wait and see. But I think more than likely we're going to see Alex Ovechkin on the ice next year on a one-year deal. Anyway, that does it for me. I'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.